football opening line show. We're not going to do the same generic opening line show. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys have access to betting odds out there, available everywhere. And, of course, you even have access to line movements and all of that kind of stuff. It's as sports betting makes its way across the U.S. and the world, more and more of these tools are available to everybody and, pretty much at your access. So not going to be your typical opening betting lines show. We're going to just we're going to take a look at the opening lines for college football week 3, 2021, but we're also going to give our first impressions and where these teams kind of sit, maybe some takeaways from last week. And we're going to do the same thing with NFL. We're going to do it tomorrow. Generally, Joe and I go live around 3:30 Eastern time, but today I've got a bunch of calls, and we were going to do this recorded, and we started doing it, and it got really long, so we just said, yeah, let's just go live. We know we didn't tell anyone, so that it is what it is, and people can watch the recording. Joe, week 3 of college football. Everyone knows this is my favorite sport. Any team that you see really separating itself from the pack, or a team that's kind of we thought was going to separate itself and maybe is not quite there?
At this point, no. I want to get a couple more weeks into this. I'm excited for this week 3, though. We had some good upsets this past weekend and some teams that really blew others out of the water. So these opening lines are already starting to move. So I'm excited to dig into them.
We've seen in the past that the committee has not been very forgiving to the Ohio State Buckeyes. A few years ago, it was a loss to Iowa at Iowa as a 20-point favorite that kept the Buckeyes out of the college football playoff, even though they had just one loss, and other one-loss teams were in there, and they were on the outside looking in. In fact, I believe they had 2 SEC teams in that season. So it'll be interesting to see how the home loss to Oregon. I think if it was on the road, the committee would be a little bit more forgiving, but at home, it's an out-of-conference loss, too. And, I think a lot of it will have to do with what we see from Oregon the rest of the way. The other team, to me, that looks just lights out is Alabama. So I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. But
I couldn't actually believe how strong the Ducks came out, especially to do that to the Buckeyes at home. That was unbelievable. I don't know the last time they lost a regular season game at home was.
Yeah, a lot of football left to be played. And, of course, this is just it's not a college football line show per se. We're going to go over the lines, but really just a first impression. You guys know we're going to go over a lot of these games. We have college football Thursday night. We've got Ohio visiting Louisiana. And I think when they scheduled this game, they were probably thinking it was going to be a better matchup than what we're seeing. But Ohio losing to Duquesne last week, maybe a little bit of the deflation going on from the week before in the Syracuse loss. And Louisiana bouncing back from that loss from Texas, looking at a 20-point favorite with a total at 56.5.
Absolutely. Sorry about the ringer there.
Happens.
The question is, can Ohio play any better than we've seen? I don't know if they can. When we look at Louisiana, they will have Georgia Southern on deck after. I think they can cover this spread. It is moving slightly downwards. So I might wait a little bit on this one.
Well, of course, we still have plenty of time, and we'll be going over these games, over and over, but just looking at the first line, a little bit of downward pressure. And, it's a little bit surprising since Louisiana 1-1 on the season, that one loss at Texas. But, the Raging Cajuns kind of getting over the hump last year and, kind of taking it to the next level, winning the Sun Belt Championship. We got Louisville and UCF going on Friday night. UCF, a shot at a Power 5 team. They don't get a lot of cracks like this. And, of course, Louisville, kind of a lower level Power 5, at least the way that they've played so far. They did win. They did bounce back from that, horrific beatdown to Ole Miss that they took and to win last week. And then we have Illinois hosting Maryland in a Friday night Big Ten tilt. The Illini +8. This line opened at 7.5. This game at Illinois, the total 59.5.
Yeah, looking at both these games, Mitch, I'm really looking at these totals and looking at the overs in them. I think we're going to see some fast-paced games, and all of these quarterbacks are pretty outstanding on both teams.
I think that both these games set up to be fairly interesting because Louisville, this line opened at 7.5. Louisville getting 7.5 at home. Now they're getting +7. Generally a pretty tough building there at Louisville and a pretty tough home crowd. UCF, I think that home win against Boise, I think they made a statement there. I think that was, a really good win, and we saw Boise bounce back against UTEP. And so certainly not a bad Boise team. And Illinois, we saw them win that opener against Nebraska, but it's been bad news since then. Maryland, this team could be flying under the radar and make some noise in the Big Ten. That 8 points, though, it's a lot on the road, but at the same time, well, we've seen Illinois, and Brett Bielema both, have their share of trouble. So definitely, of course, being the Friday night games, there'll be a lot of action on these games. Probably bet a little bit more heavily than they normally would. So, as you get closer to game time, if you have a side in either of these games, I would say these are ones that you probably want to bet a little bit earlier, and at least something, and then come back and bet it again. That's the way I bet games, is I kind of go through the card and I put all my bets in, and then I go through it again. And the ones that I really like, I bet them again. And line moves, I make adjustments, and I always end up with way more on them than I originally intended, but not going to apologize for it. That's my style.
Right, and I'm loving that these are two home dogs in both of these games. So I love betting the dogs, you guys. So I'm going to dig and find reasons to bet them.
So those of you that are joining us late, basically what we're doing on this show is that Joe and I are just going to go through the college football card for the week. Instead of it being just a pure opening line show, we're going to, in talking about, the potential line movements and all that, because I don't know, it doesn't excite me. What excites me is, maybe a first impression, a chance to get in a bet on an angle on a game, as opposed to, based on if the public or the sharps are going to move the line, which you guys all have access to that information. We don't need to beat that into the ground. You know what the point spreads are in these games, but we're just a first impression. We're going to be going over these games in a lot more detail with a lot more cappers. We have a lot of time to do that, but I wanted to do some sort of opening line show, and Joe's like, that sounds really boring. So let's give instead some information about these games that people can use. And to me, college football and boring are not two things that generally go together, but I have to agree with her in that sense, in that I'm certainly not going to do what other people are doing. It's just not my thing. Well, it's Saturday. We've got kicks off noon, and we have Miami and Michigan State, a game that was canceled last year, rescheduled for this year. Miami 6.5-point favorites. This line opened at 6. The total at 55.5, up from 54.5. The Canes bouncing back from that opening loss to Alabama, beating App State. It was a squeaker, but App State, not a bad team. Those are the tough games for a team like an ACC team to take on, where you play an App State who's a really good team. It's like, and you have nothing to gain. You're expected to win. And if you lose, oh boy, you've lost to App State. And on the other side, Michigan State, Mel Tucker, 2-0 now at Michigan State.
Absolutely. Mitch, you broke up a little bit there. So I'm pretty sure you're talking about Michigan State, correct?
Yes, and Miami.
Absolutely. So, yeah, like you're saying, I believe you're saying this total is falling. I think this will be a really hard defensive game when I do look at it. I am liking the under right now, even at 54, 55.5. I think you have great value there. Both these teams have strong defensive lines, so I'm liking that total under.
We go to the next game on the board, and this is going to be Texas A&M and New Mexico. Texas A&M needed everything that they had against Colorado. They were laying a bundle of points in that game, and it was Spiller with the late touchdown for Texas A&M. I think this guy's one of the best players in the country. Joe, any impressions here? We know New Mexico likes to run the football, and they're off to a 2-0 start.
They are, but I think Texas A&M is way too much for them. I'm totally riding them right now. Looking at this opening line at 28.5, I'm jumping all over this.
We move to Pitt against Western Michigan. Pitt coming off of that big win against Tennessee at Rocky Top. Western Michigan 1-1 on the season after losing their opener at Michigan. So another shot at a Power 5 team. We know that Western Michigan generally been pretty good. The line opened at 15.5, down to 15, but the total sticking there at 60.5. Gotta say, I kind of like the over in this thing, Joe.
Yeah, I like that over too. I think you're getting great value with that over. I was just trying to look at how the last game for Pitt ended. Yeah, that was a 41-point game for them. I'm definitely taking this over.
So I'm just going to put this here. kind of create a little graphic as we go. So originally Joe and I were going to do this recorded, and then saw how long that the show is going to be, and we just said, you know what, let's just do it live. So that's where we're at with things, but trying to. In the meantime, we got West Virginia and Virginia Tech, the Hokies, off to a 2-0 start. They looked, to me, beating Middle Tennessee, super impressive after that impressive win over North Carolina. West Virginia 1-1 on the season for the Mountaineers. It's it's a tough job in Morgantown, with this Mountaineers team. They've tried a variety of different coaches. It's just always they seem to just be missing, one thing or the other. But the Mountaineers losing their opener at Maryland, 30-24 in a game they were 2.5-point favorites, and then coming back last week and making a statement against Long Island, 66-0. That's what happens when you schedule the FCS teams coming off of a tough loss like that. And Virginia Tech, like I said, knocking off North Carolina. But now the Hokies go on the road. This one is a rivalry.
Absolutely. And with the rivalry game, I've got to go with the home team, especially with this spread so low. West Virginia, I can find it at 2.5 on FanDuel. So that's what I'd be looking at in this one.
This one is, the line went open at 2.5. It went to 3. I think this one to me is just going to be an absolute war, and one where points I think are going to come at a premium, and it's 3 just could be right on the number, but I think this one could be the one of those overtime or late win games. That's what you call a good game, maybe not one for the bettors. Interesting matchup here, Cincinnati and Indiana. This is a gigantic game for the Bearcats. It's as big as it gets for a school like this, except for their next game, which is at Notre Dame. So Cincinnati has 2 cracks at Power 5 teams. It's rare that a non-Power 5 team, even though Cincinnati has just accepted a bid to the Big 12, they're still in the AAC right now. They get 2 cracks at non-power at Power 5 teams in back-to-back weeks, both on the road, both against teams that are seen as good Power 5 teams. Indiana, who was a bowl team a year ago, and then, of course, at Notre Dame, who's Notre Dame. If Cincinnati can beat Indiana and Notre Dame and run the table the rest of the season, well, they're looking at a playoff spot, and it would be very, very tough for the committee to keep them out, an undefeated Cincinnati team. But these are big games. Indiana opens as a 3-point home dog, and the line bet to 3.5 as Luke Fickell, oh boy, he's going to have those Bearcats fired up for this one.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm loving Cincinnati right now. I think they're going to give it all it takes. That 3.5, I want to hook down. Get it at that 3 just in case, because I think this is going to come down to last possession.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great game, and I think there's a number of ways that it can go. But even though it's at Bloomington, not that far from Cincinnati, so I expect to see some Bearcat fans in the stands. But of course, Indiana has that Big Ten home following. I expect to see plenty of Indiana fans there as well. Michigan -27 against Northern Illinois. Jim Harbaugh's team has a chance to go to 3-0, halfway to bowl eligibility, 3 games into the season. 27-point favorites. They total 54.5.
Ooh, this one, I don't know, Mitch. Looking at this, yeah, I'm going to stay off this game.
Yeah, I think it's a good place to stay off, especially this early in the week. We'll have to see how this one shapes up, because generally Northern Illinois is a team that plays a little bit better than this. They knocked off Georgia Tech in week 1. They were a 19-point dog in that game. And then last week, I loved Wyoming against Northern Illinois. Wyoming got off to a very big lead in that game, and Northern Illinois able to claw their way back and lose by 7 to force the push in that one. So certainly another chance for Northern Illinois, and something we'll keep their eye on. But what we've seen from Harbaugh against unranked teams coming into the Big House, generally has a pretty good record, as much as we criticize him when it comes to playing the good teams and the big teams. But got Oklahoma and Nebraska. This is a series that I grew up watching. I grew up in Miami, and these are 2 teams that played in the Orange Bowl plenty when I was a kid. And I've seen a lot of the greats in these games, and it's nice to see this rivalry renewed. And Oklahoma, of course, headed to the SEC Nebraska, now in the Big Ten. Both these teams were Big 8 teams back then, but the Sooners, 22-point favorites. As Scott Frost wants to have a solid job here at Nebraska, you win this game, I think you're probably good for another 5 years.
Absolutely. Give me Oklahoma. They're already 3-0 on the season. Their last win over Western Carolina, 76-0. Yeah, give me Oklahoma all the way.
I think my early lean here is Nebraska. I just think that it is that kind of rivalry game, and we know that the Nebraska fans will show up in bunches. Going to skip around a little bit. We got Coastal Carolina taking on Buffalo. Buffalo really didn't show up against Nebraska last week, while Coastal, well, not going to be a novelty act much longer after last season and now this season. Already starting off 2-0, 18th ranked in the nation, the Chanticleers. 11.5 point over Buffalo here.
Yeah, so this line's looking exactly like what Coastal had to cover this past weekend. I'm on Coastal again. I really like it. This line looks like it's moving. I'm seeing 11s and 10.5s out there. So shop this one around. I think it might fall just a little bit more with them playing Buffalo, but I'm liking Coastal Carolina.
I think arguably in this game that Buffalo is playing a tougher opponent than they played last week in Lincoln against the Cornhuskers. And, Coastal is just one of those teams that we see every once in a while. It's like they don't want to be that novelty act, that one miracle season. This is a team that's building an actual program there, and they're going to be a force for quite some time. They, generally these teams with the nice geographic locations where they're located, Coastal, obviously Coastal, right, in the Carolinas, absolutely beautiful area of the country. Probably not going to be that tough to recruit, and you keep some of that local talent close by. You maybe get some of the scraps that don't go to Georgia or Clemson, and all of a sudden you got yourself a winner. We've seen many, many programs over the years do that, and I think Coastal, once again, a team to watch. We go to Colorado, where the Buffs taking on the Golden Gophers of Minnesota. Minnesota bouncing back from that loss to Ohio State with a win last week at home. Did not cover in that game. As a matter of fact, they looked pretty bad in the second half of that game last week. And Colorado, 1-1 on the season. Nice cover against Texas A&M. I think they would have liked to have gotten the win there.
And they absolutely would have liked to get the win. And we look at this line, and Minnesota did open it as the favorite, as a 3-point favorite. But now Colorado, it's flipped. They are favored by 2. There's some 1.5s out there. I think this is for a reason. I think this Colorado team, especially being the home team, is the one that's going to take this game. So it'll be interesting to see how much this line does move around.
The Colorado defense looks to be pretty solid. If you're able to hold Texas A&M down like that, and I'll tell you what, being beat by Isaiah Spiller, not going to be not the first team, not the last. We go to Kansas State, 2.5-point home dog here against Nevada. Nevada enters 2-0 on the season. Kansas State also 2-0, 1-1 against the number. Odd to see Kansas State here, a Power 5 team, as the dog against the Mountain West team, Nevada. But Nevada went into Cal, beat the Bears as a 3-point dog, 22-17. Meanwhile, last week, in typical Kansas State fashion, looked totally unimpressive against Southern Illinois. It just seems every year out of Kansas State, we see them look bad in a spot like that. We've seen them lose outright in spots like that. But Kleinman, one of the best cover coaches in all of college football.
Absolutely. I think we do see a bounce back here for Kansas State. I think this is a perfect situation, getting them back at home to get this win over Nevada. We have a total that's dropping quite drastically. It opened at 55.5. We got it down to, I'm seeing 48.5. 49s on the board. It makes sense, though. These defenses have been showing up. So first impression, Kansas State. And I'd be leaning on that under before it moves any lower.
This is one that I can't wait to watch as a fan. This is the one where the non-college football people and the NFL people watch this game, and they just don't even understand why people watch college football. But for me, these are the games. You got the pistol offense of Nevada, and you have that weird offense of Kansas State, where it always just looks like, the hidden ball play on every single play where the quarterback has the ball and then all these other guys, they kind of all get into the thing, and then someone's running around the end, and it's always like a running back that's like 5'2" and runs like a 40, on an all-out sprint down the sideline. And I love watching Kansas State play, I have to say. One of my favorite teams to watch in Nevada for years when Chris Alt was the coach. Really really good program there. Yep. We have Johnny Cash in the comments talking about Arkansas, and the Hogs. We had them last week against Texas, and they certainly are rolling. It was a gigantic step for them, and they play in that game against A&M every single year. But Notre Dame against Purdue. These teams, it's a local battle in Indiana. Jeff Brom looking to get over the hump here at Purdue. He never really has got this team to the, over the mountain there. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, Brian Kelly's team, squeaked by Toledo. Absolutely squeaked by him, but the Irish home again, second week in a row against Purdue. This is an in-state, very close type game, and it would be a gigantic statement for Purdue to go in here to South Bend and beat Notre Dame. It's a touchdown line here. The total set at 58.5. It's got that 2:30 Eastern time start. I don't know if it's on regular NBC or on the Peacock again, like they hid that Toledo game last week. But, the thing that we always have to watch out for in Notre Dame games is the lines these are usually heavily bet. Notre Dame's a heavily bet public team. And
absolutely.
So the lines are usually tight as a vice. So don't be surprised if it lands near that number.
Absolutely. That's what I'm thinking in this one. My only way would be to go with Purdue plus the points, because I'm seeing this a really tight game. I think it's going to be a field goal at the end of the day, or push right on that 7 at that touchdown. And they never go for the 2 points. They'll just get the, Purdue plus the points. Give it to me right now.
Yep. Those of you that watched our halftime last night, Joe Madden talking about the 2-point conversion did not come into play.
No, did not come into play. And I couldn't add my math either.
It doesn't matter. You're not here. Yep. You're not here for the math. You're here to give your college and pro football knowledge and all the other sports as the year goes around. And like I say all the time, we're excited to have Joe here. She's our newest member of the Pick Dogs team. Won't be able to say that forever. Soon we'll just say cornerstone of the Pick Dogs team. Anyways, Florida at the Swamp hosting the Alabama Crimson Tide. Florida ranked 9th in the country. Somehow, I understand they've won comfortably in their first 2 games, but their quarterback play looked anything but comfortable on Saturday, telegraphing passes against South Florida in the second half. Meanwhile, Alabama, they played at FCS school last week, and generally Saban takes his foot off the gas against those teams. If it was against an SEC team, they'd still be scoring touchdowns today. But, Florida has not looked impressive here so far this season, despite the 2-0 record. They're 0-2 against the number. Joe, the number here opened at 15. It's at 15.5. When Ron Romanelli was on the show last week, I said I could see a 17 on this game, and he said he could see a number in the 20s as far as an opening line. But here we are. Opens at 15, goes 15.5. The total 57.5. Ben Hill Griffith Stadium, the Swamp, one of the tougher buildings in all of the country. Oh boy, even if it's probably going to be a good time before the game, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd be taking Bama right away. Looking at this, I think they're such impressive wins. I know not great teams, but I think they come out and they take this one. I would say 20s too. I totally believe in them here.
I think if you want to get Bama in this game, I think this is one that, it is our opening line and first impression show. And I think this is one that you might want to jump on this opening line, and you'll be able to tell your friends, well, I got it at 15.5. Because even if you get 15 here, you could buy the hook down to even if you get 15.5, you could buy that hook down to 15 right now. And
exactly.
I just don't like the way the Gator quarterback play has looked. I don't like the way that they've thrown the football, particularly. And I think that against Alabama, if you telegraph passes, they're going to be touchdowns the other way. And I think that's what we're going to see in this one. We go to La Tech taking on SMU. Kind of been glossing over these games, but La Tech 1-1, SMU 2-0. Joe, either of these teams, anything for you? 13.5 points, 65.5, or is this a little off your radar this early in the week?
Yeah, probably off my radar this early in the week. First lean would be on SMU to take this one, but other than that, no, I'm going to have to dig more into these totals and see what I like for it.
This is definitely like those of you that haven't seen Joe on our shows. These are her type of games. Like, so we're out of the cupcake phase. There's only a few cupcake games this week, but we have, these type of games, these under the radar games, and that's where Joe has really knocked it out of the park here on Pick Dogs. Really excited. That's why we have her doing that instead of just introducing, saying. So it's like, I'm like the Vanna White on the show. Joe, we got SMU. And she says, and I go to the next game. It's kind of like she's got me turning letters over here. And, but the whole idea is that, Joe has a wealth of football and sports knowledge, and that's why she's here. She's not here to prop anybody else up or to be the intro special person, turn letters and do any of that stuff. She's here to talk.
Oh, thank
sports.
God. I'd be terrible at it.
Yeah,
I'd be terrible at turning those letters.
I know.
But yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing out of SMU. Definitely would be the first lean for me. This total has fallen as well as SMU's favorite in this situation. So I would be jumping on them at that 13.5 because I really think it's going to go back up from here.
We go to the next game, and Clemson against Georgia Tech, and this line 28.5. The Tigers are favored here against the Jackets. Of course, we mentioned earlier that Georgia Tech lost to Northern Illinois in their opener. Meanwhile, Clemson, they lost their opener to Georgia, and in a game that really came down to one big defensive play. But we know Dabo Swinney's Tigers are absolutely loaded with talent. And, of course, this is a regional rivalry game. Georgia Tech just down in Atlanta. And this one from Death Valley and Clemson. Boy, I could see the Tigers putting up a big number here. The total is 51. And the line 28.5. This is like an Alabama game.
Absolutely. I want to say the dogs plus the points, but I can't go against Clemson against Georgia Tech. There's no way. Yeah, I think this line's going to move up too.
I'm gonna bet that Brian Bittler likes Georgia Tech in this one.
I bet he does too. That's a solid bet right there.
Yeah, that's 59% of the early action here is on Georgia Tech plus the points.
Yeah.
Wake Forest minus 6.5 against Florida State. We saw Florida State not get it done against Notre Dame, unable to close the deal, and then we saw them last week against Jacksonville State, gave up a touchdown on the final play of the game to lose at home to FCS Jacksonville State, who is a pretty good program over the years, but, you don't expect them to lose to Florida State. And then Wake Forest, Dave Clawson's team, once again, starting the season strong, 2-0 on the season, 6.5-point favorites here at home against the Noles.
Yeah, I'm liking this. I'm liking Wake Forest. I think at home they can get this done. I'm actually surprised it hasn't gone up to 7.5 on this one, getting you on that touchdown win. I think they'll get a touchdown win on this.
61.5 is a monster number for a total. Boy, the book's looking at a track meet in this one. Iowa returns back home after taking out their rival Iowa State as a 4.5-point underdog in that game. We all loved Iowa in that game and continued to ride them all the way to the window up against Kent State, 22.5 points, though.
Ooh, it's a huge line, but I'm going to go with Iowa. First look, I think Iowa can get it done in this situation. I just don't it's huge. 22 points, that's a lot.
It's always tough with these really big numbers. And I think, it's just one of those things that later on in the week, you take a look at the line movement, you take a look at some of these other factors, and you always have to remember that, the books are putting these numbers out to either drive you one way or the other or to drive you off the game completely. So, you always have to factor in all these different points. I think Iowa clearly the better team here, but Kent State really isn't like a pushover team. When we look at Kent State, they lost to Texas A&M in the opener, 41-10, 29.5-point dogs. Did not cover in that game, but it was a late score by Texas A&M to get the cover there. And they bounced back against VMI. They were 18.5-point favorites. They won 60-10, so. Yeah,
absolutely. Right. They totally covered that spread. So I'm going to be looking at some highlights from that game to see really what Kent State did so perfectly to win that by 50, and then I'll decide if they can keep up this 22.5-point spread.
It just seems that, to me, looking at this game, maybe right now I'm leaning Kent State, and the reason being is that they're a better team than we saw them hang with Texas A&M with the big number, and with Iowa, I'm going to guess that the public's going to be just all over the Hawkeyes after beating Iowa State and also winning that opener against, as well, in Big Ten action. So,
well, especially winning as a dog, people are going to all be talking about that.
And on the road. Speaking about losing as a favorite, Ohio State lost as a favorite last week against Oregon. Kerry Coombs, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, no answers, no adjustments, no nothing. It was the Ducks simply running circles around the Ohio State defense. I think, Ohio State's offense certainly looked okay, but their defense just had no answers. And if you can't stop them from scoring, well, at a certain point, if they stop you once, that is the ball game. And that is what happened in that game.
Absolutely. And we knew this coming into that game, that Ohio State's defense just wasn't up to par like we want them to be. So looking at this matchup, heads are going to roll if they don't come out and win this game over Tulsa. If Tulsa gets an upset on Ohio State, 27 points, it's going to be a major issue for them. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ohio State does win this game. I think they make huge adjustments this week to make sure their defense does something. Now, talking about their defense, I'm looking at this total. We have a total that's falling, opened at 64.5. I'd be looking at betting this over in this one, because I think if their defense doesn't show up, Tulsa will score those points needed. If their defense does show up, it's still shaky. So I think the over has more value than the under in this one.
The 26.5 is definitely a number that I'm looking at. And I think this is one that I'll probably be looking at the first half as well. Ohio State's just a bigger physical team than Tulsa. And we saw Tulsa play pretty well against Oklahoma State. I don't think it was any surprise to, well, it was no one on our show, a surprise to no one that they covered against Oklahoma State. I think we all had Tulsa in the points on the show. But, I think that against Ohio State might just be in a little bit over their head in this one. It's a bad spot, with Ohio State coming off that loss and now knowing that, they have no wiggle room whatsoever and they need to make a statement and put on a show every single game. Ryan Day has only lost one regular season game as the head coach of Ohio State, and it was last week. We're going to see how he rebounds from a loss this week, and my guess, it's going to be a clinic put on by the Buckeyes, who have just All-Americans across the board, just basically almost an NFL team. And while it's take nothing away from Tulsa here, I just think they're way overmatched in this spot, and it's a bad day to be the Ohio State opponent this week. I don't care who it was going to be.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine that locker room. It's a bad day to be an Ohio State player today.
It's going to be a tough week of practice. Kansas up against Baylor. Kansas, well, absolute dumpster fire. Went into Coastal Carolina, had a chance to cover, let the Chanticleers get into the end zone late. Some people got to push, some people got to cover. We all had covers on the show. We got it at 28.5, but that's why you got to get those earlier lines. It was there all week until, an hour or so before game time, it went to 29.
Absolutely.
But here against Baylor 2-0 on the season. Kansas 1-1 with that one win was against North Dakota. They did not cover in that game, though.
No, they didn't. This Baylor line is moving, opened at 14-point favorites, up to 17. I'm liking Baylor here, even though they are on the road against this Kansas team. I think that they get it done, and I could see them, winning by 3 touchdowns, to be honest with you. I think they're just the way better team on all fronts.
I was really impressed with Kansas's quarterback play, but he was a little dinged up in that game. He got hit pretty hard in that Coastal game. So I think, that is the angle. If you like Kansas to keep it close, you just got to really make sure that the status of the quarterback is there. We've got USC up against Washington State. Nick Rolovich, one of the worst cover coaches in all of college football, getting 8.5 points here with Washington State against USC, coming off of a really bad loss as a 17-point favorite against Stanford.
Well, did they just keep that trend up? I don't know. I would think I like Washington State as the home dog here. I hated what I saw out of Southern Cal. I don't think they get it done. I think they have a couple of letdown spots, and this is another one of them on the road here.
Yeah, I think this game might be closer than the number. This is one of those games where, at least to me, the first impression, I'm going to dig a little deeper into this one as well, as I will all of these games. Just on the first look, it's, it's tough because it wasn't close against Stanford. It wasn't like, oh, they beat them on a last-second miracle or anything like that. There's a little bit more to it there. Skip ahead a little bit. Arkansas taking on Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern, 23.5-point dogs at Fayetteville. A little bit of a letdown spot here for Arkansas after getting that big win against Texas. This is a sandwich game. They've got A&M on tap next week in their annual rivalry game. So sandwich in between Texas and Texas A&M come the Georgia Southern Eagles, 1-1 on the season up against the Hogs, 23.5-point favorites, trying to make a statement, show the world that they are back in business.
Give me Georgia Southern all day long. Absolutely, with those points. I love them in this situation when Arkansas is in that sandwich, like you were saying. Yeah, so I think it's great value here. You can get them plus 23.5. I think they easily do it. This is one where if you're a huge situational capper, it might be a good thing to sprinkle on the money line. They could come out and win this straight up, shock everyone.
I agree with you that this could be one of those shockers, especially coming off the Texas win. A natural letdown spot and a natural look-ahead spot. You got the letdown, the look-ahead. You got everything going on here, and to throw it all in, you got an Arkansas team whose resume over in recent years just hasn't shown that they have the pedigree to string together win after win after win. I think that certainly they bounced off the bottom, and that's good for college football. I love college football, and there's certain teams when they're good, the sport is better, and Arkansas, to me, is one of those teams. And, great fan base, great following, great everything. But I just think 23.5, I think this might be one where, the Arkansas fans come back to earth a little bit, and they either win one where they either hold on for dear life. I could see this one being less than a touchdown if Arkansas manages to win. And like you said, I might sprinkle a little bit on the money line there. It doesn't take much to get me there, but I will. All right, I'm going to put a little bit on the money line for Georgia.
Well, especially when you're looking at such a tight game like this. Like if we think it's going to be as tight as it is, with Arkansas such a heavy favorite, we're going to get some great value sprinkling on Georgia Southern on that money line. Definitely.
We've got Memphis taking on Mississippi State. This one at Memphis. You have the SEC team actually going on the road here, which you don't see too often, but Mike Leach has his Bulldogs 2-0 on the season. Last year, they started the season gangbusters when Leach's first year in Stark Vegas. But he, after a while, they ran like zone defenses, and his offense really struggled against the zone. Meanwhile, Memphis 2-0 on the season. We know that, Memphis has been known for scoring points, but, here they are taking on an SEC opponent. This should be another really, really good one, and we're seeing a line that indicates, this is probably going to be a good game for the fans too.
Absolutely. Good tight game in this matchup. Off the top of my head, I would say Memphis plus the points. I would take in this one. I'm going to have to dig further into this and see. But I think they get it done. They get it done at home, and they keep it tight.
Yeah, I think I could see Memphis winning this game outright as well. I know that, it's early in the season, but they do have the number one ranked offense in the country in the early going, averaging 635 yards a game. That is a lot of offense. And we know Mississippi State's going to be better than that, and that number is going to come down. They're not going to average, 700 yards a game this season.
Yes.
But I think Memphis has a shot to win that thing outright. It'll be interesting to see if there is line movement and if, possibly Memphis, this game, I could see it going to a pick 'em. Or Memphis being favored by the time this thing goes. Anyways, we got Duke hosting Northwestern. What we have there is about 200 football players that are all smarter than me. Two of the, these are two tough schools to get into, academic wise. Pretty much way out of my league. Wouldn't even, they wouldn't even let me there for the campus tour, I don't think. But
Do you have to pass a test to go for the tour even?
For these two schools, I think Duke, Duke, I believe, is the number one toughest school to get into in the United States. It's harder to get into than Harvard. And
wow.
Northwestern, I believe, is in that category as well. They're not Ivy League schools, but to get in, Duke, I believe, is the number one toughest school to get into in the country, and Northwestern not too far behind.
Okay, good to know. When I look at this game, I definitely am liking this total. We have a total 49.5, 50. It's floating right around there. I'd be looking at the under with the defenses on both of these teams.
It looks to be a little bit of a down year for the ACC and for Duke in general too. And Northwestern, while they lost that opener to Michigan State, I think they're going to play a smart game here, and I'm going to take Northwestern, lay the 3 points on the road. At least my first.
I like it.
There's those, like I said, just a lot of people a lot smarter than I am. At least book smart. Go to Washington, where they host Arkansas State. Washington did not look good against Michigan in that game on Saturday night. I expected a lot more, but they looked to be a little bit lost there. And Arkansas State 1-1 on the season. Of course, we're used to seeing the Red Wolves in the their Sun Belt play. When we start going into those games where we have a game every night of the week, we'll see plenty of Arkansas State later on in the season. But right now they're 1-1 and 6-0 against the number in their last 6 non-conference games against a Washington team that's kind of desperate for a win right now.
Yeah, they're desperate for the win, but can they cover this spread? I think they get the win here, but I don't like the cover on this at all.
No, I think there's just too much of the mojo going for Arkansas State in this one. Yeah. It is a big number, and the thing that really impressed me last week out of Arkansas State is they went toe to toe with Memphis. They didn't just the defense didn't show up, but it's like they're like, you're gonna put 55 on us, we're gonna try and put 56 on you, and they put 50 on them. So I mean, we know that they know where the end zone is. So that's half the battle. Some of the times. Let's see, we could skip ahead from a couple of these games. I think we'll go to this one, Georgia. Between the hedges taking on South Carolina. South Carolina was a dog last week, and then the line inverted against East Carolina. They ended up getting the win in that game. The Gamecocks 2-0 on the season. Remember, it was just a couple of years ago that they beat Georgia outright in this exact spot, going between the hedges. They always play early in the season. There was a stretch of these games between these two teams where every game was decided by 5 points or less. And it was years and years that it went on. And then finally Georgia emerged from that, but then South Carolina out of nowhere knocked off the Bulldogs. And, it was a year that the Bulldogs were thinking national championship, and that's how it usually happens.
Absolutely. Give me South Carolina in this matchup. I like them against Georgia. Everything that you were saying, I just think this is too many points, and South Carolina can hang with them, especially for a bit. I'd be interested in seeing what the first half is as well, and just digging into those stats a little bit more, how they do hang in that first half. But that's what I like when I first look at it, South Carolina plus points.
Yeah, like I always say, college football is my game. It's my favorite sport, and it's games like this that that make it that way. This is one where you have to be part of the fan base or understand the psyche of a fan base to understand just how important a game like this is to each of these fan bases. What you see is a South Carolina team that if you're on the surface or NFL type fan, you see a team that's this record, you see a team that's that record, you see all that other stuff. And you see a team that, has been in the national championship game, considered in the playoff picture. And a lot of people, thinking Georgia's a playoff team this year. But what I see is that the road team has covered 5 in a row in the series, that South Carolina's covered 6 of their last 8 in Georgia between the hedges. And now they're getting 30.5 points. I know Kirby Smart is a type of guy that loves to get revenge. I'm not sure that he gets it here. I think that's a lot of points in a rivalry game, especially, fans in the stands, the whole thing. I expect to see some South Carolina fans at this game as well. Should be a beauty in an SEC matchup, flying under the radar there. in that
Mitch,
7
I'm
o'clock.
going to bet it. As soon as we're done this show, I'm taking South Carolina plus the points. I love it.
I don't think it's going to hang there at that number. I just can't see it. San Diego State 7.5-point home dogs against Utah. Utah licking their wounds after BYU won the game, stormed the field, taunted, shoved it in their face. Lots of penalties in that game. There was all kinds of taunting and late hits, and I mean, it was just, these were two teams that did not like each other. And San Diego State, well, they just continue to roll on. They play in a lot of close games, and they usually seem to find the right end of the scoreboard there. This one, they're getting 7.5 at home, up from 7, and the total set 44.5. So the odds makers looking for a pretty deliberate pace here.
Yeah, Utah has made my list of I don't want to bet them. Whereas San Diego State is on a roll right now. I think they go with momentum, especially with this home game, and cover, if not beat Utah.
Utah is 0-5 against the number in their last 5 non-conference, and the under 6-1 in Utah games following a game that they didn't cover the spread, while San Diego State 7-1 against the number in their last 8 as a home dog. That is a pretty good trend.
There is another one where, we're getting off this show and these bets are going in today.
It's like all of a sudden it's like there was a first look, first impression. Now it's becoming first bets.
I'm going to bet these 3 Georgia Southern money line. I'm loving. Right?
Joe and I were talking before the show. It's like, what should we call it? Because I don't want to be like the opening line show or anything like that. But I think that's what we call it. First bets of the week.
First bets.
First bets.
Exactly. Right. These situations where we know there should be movement on these lines from everything we're seeing and what we're going to take.
We've got Penn State hosting Auburn. Auburn, I said at the beginning of the season, those Auburn linebackers are for real. That is an NFL linebacker unit playing the college game at Auburn. And Penn State, James Franklin off to a 2-0 start. They got the cover last week against Ball State. I thought Ball State had a shot in that one. I figured that they would cover. They certainly played well in spots. They were okay, but Penn State just a little too physical for them. They will not be too physical for Auburn in an SEC Big Ten clash here. This is going to be a beauty.
Absolutely will be. We've got a total that's dropping, and it's dropping fast. We open at 56.5. We are down to some 52.5. I am liking the under on this game. I think both these defenses, the defensive lines, they're going to come out strong against each other, and I'm seeing a lower scoring game for sure.
I capped this game immediately when I saw it on the schedule. I got it at 4 is the number I'm at. So anything 4 or better, I'm taking the points with Auburn.
Yeah. I like it.
I understand it'll be the night game, the whiteout, and all that kind of stuff. We're starting to move into these later games. A lot of matchups that a little less attractive. We got Vandy at home, an 11-point dog against Stanford. Vandy 1-1 in the season. Stanford coming off of that big win against USC. So certainly a letdown spot here against an SEC team, but Vandy has been pretty terrible. Once again, 200 college football players smarter than I am. 2 great academic institutions going at it here. Joe, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think off Stanford's win, this line is a little inflated. We opened at 9. It's up to 11s in places. Give me the home dog plus the points.
Got I'm kind of torn on this one. I'll have to go to it later on the week. I kind of like the under 49 though. It's up, from 48.5. Yeah. So maybe it even goes higher, and I hold out on it. But I'm thinking 49. Those of you joining us a little bit late, we're just going through the open college football lines. We don't want to have this college football line show where we sit here and read the lines. Yeah. We just want to kind of give more of a first impression, first bets, first look at this. And, of course, we'll be going over college football all week because it is my favorite sport. But, of course, I'm joined by Joe Madden, our latest addition to Pick Dogs. We're happy to have her, and she knows her stuff, which is pretty damn good. Anyways, got Texas taking on Rice. Texas coming off of that tough loss at Fayetteville last week as a as a favorite. Of course, the Hogs, it was like they walked right into a hornet's nest. It was a tough spot. I've been down on Steve Sarkisian, well, for as long as he's been coaching, and I just don't feel that he's a top-notch head coach. The line in this one, 26 against the Rice Owls. Rice, generally one of those teams that you kind of, they kind of muck around, but this year they have not been mucking too well, 0-2 against the number coming in.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this Rice team. They're 0-2 against the number, but they haven't won one of their games either. I'm liking Rice to come in and at least cover the spread. I'm liking this line. It is, it's going up. I would wait on this one. I want to see Texas come in at a stronger favorite than they're showing right now, and I think it will. And then I'm taking Rice plus the points because I think that they do cover. There's no way they're going to upset Texas, though.
Be sure to smash that like button. Helps us a ton and doesn't cost you anything. See, we got a bunch of dislikes. Maybe they didn't like some of our picks. Oh well. It's okay. Maybe they don't like me. I'm sure that's part of it too. I'm okay with it. I like Rice in that one plus the points. I like Rice. What I really like in that one is Rice the first half.
Okay.
I think that they're able to keep it close for the first half. I think Texas might open it up in the second half, kind of like what we saw against Louisiana in the Texas matchup. But anyways, be sure to hit that like button. We appreciate each and every one of you. I wish they would tell you like who'd hit the dislike. So people that go ahead.
I was going to say, it's the same people every time.
Yeah, I know it is. I know who a lot of the people are, so it doesn't. It's almost a compliment. That's why like I had one show where I tried to get as many as I could. I had over 50. So I don't know. They think I have no idea. Whatever.
It's all good.
You know what? If those are the people that dislike me, then I'm doing something right. That's what I always say.
Absolutely.
Yep. I'm sure it has zero to do with Joe. Anyways, we got Boise State against Oklahoma. Maybe it does. Maybe it's you. It's you.
Maybe it's me. It could be me.
Maybe it's you.
It probably is.
It's like that Joe.
Sorry, guys, if you don't like me.
That Joe. She's always up in my grill about my.
Yeah, you can.
Can you believe she took Georgia Southern money line?
Yeah. You know why? Because the value is there. And when we look at, you guys, I love situational handicapping, and I love going against the grain. I love looking at the value with these dogs that have a really good chance of winning it and sprinkling on that money line. You will not find me take a minus 200 favorite. I am so against that. There's a lot of people, we could sit here and tell you, to bet Bama straight up on the money line. Well, you're not going to make money. Yes, you'll win 100% of your bets. Well, 99% of your bets if you're taking those huge favorites, but that's not what we're here for. You could do that. Grandma can pick that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we're not going to sit here and just pick all favorites all day, and we're not going to sit here and talk about how great every team is. We're going to look for that angle where a team has a flaw that maybe another team can exploit, because I'm not one of these people. I am a numbers guy. I look at the numbers, obviously, and I've even gone into some trends here on the show. But I watch a lot of games, and I think a lot of you have seen my setup. We've done shows from my living room. You guys have seen my whole setup and what goes into it. And it's like I'm a game watcher, and those of you that have watched our halftime shows for the NFL over the years, there's a reason we hit all those winners, because we can see the angle. Like last night, we knew that, the Rams had sputtered on a few drives where they should have found the end zone. And we knew that the Bears probably had gotten some breaks and that the Rams were going to make some adjustments. And we hit 3 halftime bets on that game alone. So hopefully you guys tune in tonight, Monday Night Football, Raiders, Ravens, if you're watching this live.
I am so excited. It's like an understatement to say I'm excited for tonight's game. It's going to be phenomenal. I don't know if you know, Mitch, but me being a Chargers fan, guess which team is my daughter's team?
What happened?
Looks like we have lost sound.
It'll regenerate.
Mitch, can you hear me?
It'll regenerate.
I can't hear you.
Hello? Could you hear me? I can't hear you, Joe.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, my wife had an incident. Did you hear me screaming?
No,
I hit the mute.
couldn't. I didn't know if you were yelling at me that you couldn't hear me.
No, so. it's my wife had an incident. There's a gecko in the kitchen, and she cut the tail off accidentally, and she thinks that she injured the gecko, but actually it just regenerates.
I know it grows back, but that's awful.
Yeah.
I wish I would have screamed. Did she scream?
Yeah, she's crying.
Aww.
So, well, anyways, we've just got a few games left. Boise, Oklahoma State. Boise 5-point favorites in this one over the Cowboys at home on the blue turf. Of course, Oklahoma State looked like lousy stuff last week against Tulsa, getting the win, but barely. 2-0 in the season for Mike Gundy's team, but 0-2 against the number. Boise bouncing back from that loss at UCF and 2-0 against the number coming in. I think for me, Boise, get it early, get it often.
Yeah, I agree with you here. This total is rising too. I'd be looking at the first half total or even the team total for Boise. I'd be interested in seeing what that's at. I'm liking what they're doing. I'm liking the numbers they're putting up. And I think they take it to Oklahoma State, especially being at home crowd, everything like that. Boise State all the way.
Arizona State ranked 21st in the nation, taking on BYU. We haven't seen Arizona State ranked like this in quite some time. And BYU coming off of that win against Utah, now 2-0 on the season with wins over Arizona and Utah. I think a lot of people didn't expect much from BYU this year, but here they are, and now they get a crack at another Power 5 team in a ranked Power 5 team, getting 3.5 points at home in somewhat of a letdown spot after hosting Utah last week in the Holy War.
Yeah, this one, I can't take BYU in this matchup. I think Arizona State comes in. I think they cover this spread. I want to take BYU at home, but I don't think they can do it again.
I think I'm going to go with BYU here. I like the battle-tested team. The win over the Pac-12 Arizona team did not cover the spread in that game, but of course the win as an outright dog against Utah, another Pac-12 team. So this is their third game against Pac-12 competition, and they have fared well in the first two. Arizona State, I'm just not used to seeing them at 2-0 and ranked, so I can't really rally behind them in this one. I'm going to take BYU here, getting the 3.5 at home. It looks like a sucker of all sucker bets, but I think I'm going to be the sucker, at least at this point of the season. I'm sure Bittler will be all over Arizona State. This thing is going to be like sucker bet after they're all public, going to be humping up on BYU after, right? So he's going to be saying. Anyways.
And that's my only concern. I really worry that it is, right?
It's definitely, that is the concern, is that it just seems odd they're 3.5 point home dogs, and, they've knocked off Pac-12 teams while, Arizona State beat Southern Utah and who's the other win against? So they beat Southern Utah and they beat UNLV.
UNLV.
Yeah. And they didn't even cover in that one against UNLV. So I don't know. For me, I'll take BYU. I'm walking into it. I'm sure it's one I'm going to lose, but it won't be the first bet I lose. I'm not like some of those other guys who never lose, and I'm actually going to get to bet it before the game starts instead of after, which I don't understand how people do that. Just a couple games left on the board. UCLA, 11.5 point favorites against Fresno. UCLA had the week off last week after looking pretty impressive in their first two games so far. They knocked off Hawaii. They absolutely steamrolled them, and then they beat LSU following that up, and then Chip Kelly's team had the week off. Now up against Fresno State, also playing. They're playing their fourth game of the season. Fresno, 2-1 so far.
See, I'm loving what I've seen so far out of Fresno, but with UCLA off a week off, playing at home, having all that time to prepare, I think they do come in strong. We've got an 11-point spread. I think they can cover this against this Fresno team. I would be looking at a higher total. This total has fallen from 67.5 down to 61. I'm loving it at 61 for the over.
I like the over, and I like Fresno with the points here. We saw them lose to Oregon by 7, and I think, if you could stay within 7 of Oregon at Oregon. I think you certainly have a shot of staying within 7 against UCLA, whose defense has given up some points already.
Absolutely.
We go to Iowa State going to UNLV. UNLV 0-2 on the season. Iowa State 1-1 coming off that tough loss to Iowa. Are they just deflated coming into this one, or do they bounce back? It really is the question. For me, I think they're going to be a little bit deflated as much as they want to come back, make a statement, do all that stuff. Maybe a little tight. I'm going to go UNLV plus the 30.
Yeah, I don't like how huge the spread is. I think UNLV plus the 30 is definitely the right place to be at.
We go to the final game of the night, and actually this one goes on to Sunday morning. We head right over to the closest game to me. It's certainly not a drive away, but a short plane ride away over to Oahu, where the Hawaii Warriors taking on San Jose State Spartans. Nick Starkel, the San Jose quarterback, really has added a new dimension to this team. They have played, fairly well so far, but Hawaii just 7-point home dogs in this one. They do have a heck of a home field advantage with the travel time, the distance, and, the other team's in Hawaii.
Yeah, you know what? Give me Hawaii plus the points in this matchup. I know I went against them this weekend, but I think home field, you got San Jose State traveling to Hawaii, which is not normal for these other teams to be on that different time zone. So give me Hawaii plus the points, home dogs. I love it.
Yeah, this should be a tough game, and I think Hawaii can hang in there with them as well. I'm going to take Hawaii with the points, at least as my first look, and we'll see if that changes throughout the week. It may not, but just a first look at it if I'm forced to make a decision. But anyways, nailed it at just about an hour. I think we're good on this one, but we appreciate it, Joe, and I think this is something we'll do every week. Of course, tomorrow we'll do the NFL opening lines. Probably move this one back to our 3:30 Eastern time spot, which is kind of the time of day where Joe and I do a show every day. Get back into it. I just had a different schedule this week, and thanks, Joe, for accommodating me, and thanks, everyone, for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Also, if you have suggestions for this show, let us know. We were originally going to do it as a recorded show. I was going to have graphics with all the lines and everything, but I don't know. We started doing it recorded, and we're like, I think this would be better live. But thanks, everyone, who joined us live. Those of you that watched the replay, thank you, too. Smash the like. Joe, as always, pleasure. We'll see you guys tomorrow for our NFL First Impressions.